We thought about it, planned it out perfectly.
A jury found an Iowa woman guilty of killing her stepmother in her sleep, then bragged about it on social media. We're breaking down this brazen murder case with defense attorney and former prosecutor Safa Robinson-Ferrer. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Hey everybody, this is a Law&Crime legal alert. Google Incognito tracked users' browsing data without their knowledge. Well, Mass Tort Alliance, one of our legal sponsors, is helping users file for compensation due to Google users' privacy issues surrounding Google Incognito. So if you've used Google Incognito anytime since 2016, you can start your claim in less than 10 questions at incognitoclaims.com/sidebar. 35-year-old Samantha Bevins will likely spend the rest of her life behind bars after being found guilty of first-degree murder out in Iowa. And that is because prosecutors say Samantha Bevins killed her stepmother, 58-year-old Jody Bevins, back in July of 2022. They said Jody had kicked Samantha out of the house, so the younger woman killed the stepmom in her sleep. But she allegedly didn't do it alone. No, prosecutors believe that Samantha's boyfriend, Taco Talley, was also involved in the killing. Now, we're going to break all this down. There are a lot of moving parts. And I'm going to bring in right now defense attorney and former prosecutor Safa Robinson-Ferrer. Did I get it right?
You did.
Yes. Okay, great. You know, before we came on, I asked Safa how to pronounce her name, and she said, you could just say Safa Robinson. It's too much. I said, nope, we're giving you the full name. So thank you so much for coming on, Safa Robinson-Ferrer. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so I want to walk through this story with you. So bear with me. I'm going to tell everybody a little bit of backstory. We go back to July 2022, and Jody Bevins was napping on a couch in her home when police say that Talley and Bevins covered Jody's face with a pillow, smothering her. Authorities say Jody died from asphyxiation. Prosecution says that Bevins had been kicked out of the home 2 weeks earlier for allegedly stealing. They posited that she had gone back to get revenge on Jody and possibly steal from the family's safe. Now, the defense said that Bevins was only going to the home to pick up a dog and that it was Talley who started to attack Jody. Now, Ms. Bevins testified in her own defense, saying she saw what was happening, but she couldn't stop it. She told the jury that Talley was the abusive one, that he was manipulating and controlling her. She testified that she put a pillow over her stepmother's face, but she wasn't the one who killed her.
I did not kill her. She was still breathing both times she came out, when I came out of that room. I couldn't even stay in there with her when she was dying. I was too scared. I couldn't do it. I couldn't stop him. I couldn't help Jody. I was just frozen. I was scared, and I was going off of what I thought was best in that moment.
Now, prosecutors said, quote, "It doesn't matter if you think she had held the pillow down 100% of the time. If you two are doing it together, then you're both guilty of it." Safa, let's start there. Are prosecutors correct there?
Prosecutors are absolutely correct in that fashion. The charge here is murder in the first degree. There is some accomplice liability when it comes to that, or joint and several liability, as what we like to sometimes call it. If there's one individual that is in the process of committing a crime, particularly a felony or a depraved indifference sort of crime, the other individual that is there, that is assisting them in that, or is a part of that plan or scheme, will be held liable and will be charged accordingly.
And it seems like the forensics kind of back that up, because Jody had abrasions on her face indicating that she possibly was smothered with a pillow. And there was also blunt force trauma to her cheek, so possibly she was hit. And apparently Bevins confessed to investigators during her interview how she was, and this is really so graphic, grinding her foot on the pillow. So those forensics seem to kind of, I would imagine. I mean, how much does it show whether Talley did it or it was Bevins?
And that's the thing here. I understand what the defense was trying to go at here, which was that she was under the control of the boyfriend at the time, or Talley, I believe is his name. But the fact of the matter is this: she participated in that event. She allegedly held down the pillow, and the jury ultimately did determine that she was responsible for that. If her story was true and correct, or if her defense was true and correct, and what prosecutors are probably or may have brought up during cross-examination is, did she call 911? was there at any point in time, did she try to stop the act from occurring or stop the boyfriend from committing these acts? And I don't know that she did any of those things. And certainly a jury's going to take a look at that to see if she did, in fact, have any mitigating factors as to how, what her participation is in this particular crime.
Have you ever seen a case where somebody was under duress to kill? They were forced against their will to attack or kill another person, and that is a successful defense. Because imagine what we're talking about here is someone saying that she's in a domestic violence relationship. She's in a situation where she cannot get away. She has no choice but to watch and stand by, or even was forced to participate in the crime. Is duress, if we take that as true, is that ever a defense? And have you ever seen that be successful as a defense?
That certainly can be a defense. How far it will go in the eyes of a jury is another question. I've never seen it successfully played in front of the jury. I've never seen anybody acquitted on those grounds, and I can't say that has never happened, but that is certainly something that they can attempt to use as a defense. Just depends on how far it's going to go with the jury, and it looks like here it didn't go very far.
Yeah, one of the reasons why it didn't go very far, I didn't even mention arguably the worst piece of evidence in this whole case. You might say, her confessing was bad, the forensics were bad. What about the fact that the prosecution pointed out that if Bevins was so scared and traumatized, why did she record and save a video on Snapchat admitting to the murder?
I killed her myself.
And I knew that's what happened, so good job.
We killed her.
The video was saved one day after Jody's body was found. Law enforcement ran the video through, I believe, this special software to amplify the sound, make sure it was crystal clear as possible so we knew what was being said. Now, Safa, the defense, how do you get away from that video, right? They tried to say, and I'm curious your opinion on this, that Tally was the one in charge, that he manipulated her, and that Bevins was trying to get a reaction out of Tally with that video. And she testified that Tally would tell her things that she didn't think were real, so she saved things on her phone, that she goes, I had to make notes and videos, voice recordings when something happens, and would go to Tally's story because it was all twisted up, that he would make her feel crazy. I don't know.
Here's the thing, that may be true to some extent. However, that does not negate her role in this, in this murder or in this homicide. And the fact of the matter is that if this video was saved a day after this allegedly took place, one thing we're going to want to know, and I don't think that was present here, was that at no point in time did she go to law enforcement to report the murder. She, again, after this took place, took no steps in mitigating her part in it and continued to hide it. And in fact, put something out on social media, which it's a defense attorney's worst nightmare. Our clients posting things on social media. I don't understand why, but it goes to the condition of the mind of the individual. And, the lack of appropriate decision-making in these matters is that, what are we doing here? You've got an incident where you're alleged to have killed your stepmother. You're putting it on video. Now you're also going to trial on it when the evidence is very clear, which is certainly well within her right. And I don't think people should ever be penalized for exercising their right to a fair and just trial. But we have to look at everything that is a factor in this case. And so I don't think she did herself any favors by doing anything in this case.
It's also tough, the fact that law enforcement also reportedly found a to-do list purportedly written by Bevins, and on that list was "Kill Jody" written on it. I mean, not to make dark humor, but you had to remind yourself. It's almost as if you gave prosecutors everything you needed for a conviction. Now, she would claim that she was using meth when she wrote that list, which made me wonder, is the use of narcotics or substance abuse, could that be a defense to some of these different, pieces of evidence?
That's certainly a possibility, and that's going to be regulated by state statutes. So every state, of course, has a different set of laws and a different means of how a prosecutor is to prove those laws and how the defense can negate or craft their defense and, rebutting what the prosecution is trying to prove. So in some states that may be a viable defense, in some it may not. It definitely goes to the state of mind. There has to be a culpable mental state that is proven, particularly in murder in the first degree, intent intent. So if she was under some type of drug or alcohol abuse at that point in time, that could be a question for the jury to decide as to whether or not the prosecution has met that burden for that particular element of intent.
Do you think it was a mistake for her to take the stand, or did she really have no option with all this evidence in her face?
More often than not, we love for our clients to remain silent, particularly through trial. I think that it was a mistake for her to get on the stand. And, you subject yourself to cross-examination by the prosecution. You never know exactly what they're going to ask. And no matter how much we prepare our clients for that process, it's different when you're in the courtroom. It's different when you're under the pressure and stress of a trial. And so more often than not, it opens up a can of worms that we really don't want to have to answer to. On the flip side to that, once a story is told and unfolding, particularly with a body that's attached to it, some type of homicide, jurors want to hear the other side of the story. One of the things that I like to ask during voir dire, which is our questioning of jurors, is if my client exercises their right to remain silent throughout this trial, are you going to penalize them? And that's one of the questions that I think is very important, because that right to remain silent attaches through the entire trial. I advise my clients to continue to remain silent unless there is some reason that we really need to get something out in front of the jury that we can't do any other way.
Should she have just taken a plea? Should she have tried to fight this? On one hand, I say I'm not surprised, because her accomplice, Mr. Talley, went on trial separately last year. He was convicted of first-degree murder. Unlike Bevins, he chose not to testify in his own defense. He was sentenced to life in prison. Maybe with his conviction, she was saying, I could just go up there, put all the blame on him. I might as well try.
And that's definitely a possibility, I think, and I'm speculating, of course, but maybe once she saw that he didn't testify in his own defense, and he ultimately was found guilty, she may have thought she would have been helping herself by at least trying to explain away what her part was in this homicide.
Right.
But certainly it wasn't a good enough favor that she did for herself, and she ultimately landed herself with a guilty verdict.
And just going back to Talley's sentencing, the victim's family had a chance to make some statements. Jody's son, Davis McKenna, said that Jody had taken in Talley's children when he couldn't care for them. In his statement, he said, quote, "She helped Tekoa, she sacrificed for Tekoa, and he returned all that hope and sacrifice by killing her. It makes me ask the question, what is the point of helping people? It makes me not want to help people, trust people, or even be around people. I am a darker person, which is a tragedy within itself, because the complete opposite of what my mom stood for." Just shows you the tragedy of this case, right?
Absolutely. And one of the things I always tell people, and I've had clients who have been in positions where they've helped someone and then they've landed in my office because they're being criminally charged with something they had no idea about. No good deed goes unpunished. That is a blanket statement across the board. And, unfortunately, no matter how much good we want to do in the world, we always have to be mindful, because with all the good we do, we'd still be punished for it in the end. And that's very tragic.
And Samantha Bevins, she will be sentenced in June after being convicted, and she also faces a life sentence without the possibility of parole, which I understand is the mandatory sentence. Safa, thank you so much for coming on. Safa Robinson-Ferrer, thank you so much. Really appreciate you taking the time and breaking down this case with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, that's all we have for you here on Sidebar, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.